Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we are going to talk about the Hellraiser reboot, which just began filming in Serbia, of all places. I guess that was just a very cheap place to film. But this is the reboot. This is being done by Hulu. And this is also a movie that is apparently taking more from Clive Barker's original novella that's titled The Hellbound Heart, as opposed to the first Hellraiser film, which he directed. Now, despite the fact he wrote the book and directed the first movie, Clive Barker made them fairly different from one another. And one of the big differences that I know that this production has been toting is the fact that they have changed Pinhead from a man to a woman. Now, in the original Hellbound Heart, it was left kind of ambiguous, if I remember correctly. But for the most part, the Pinhead in that movie, or in that book, I should say, was loosely hinted at being female. Clive decided to change that when he did the original movie because he didn't think it would sell as well with a female lead, or a female lead as the villain anyway. And he also had Doug Bradley, who obviously nailed that role completely. So I know a lot of people are kind of hung up on that. I'm not really hung up on that much because it's not your standard Hollywood gender swap. It's not like, oh, hey, we're going to do Ocean's 11 but all with all chicks, or we're going to do an all-female Avengers movie, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that. It's like, no, this was based off of the original work, which had the Pinhead character as a female. So I don't have really that much of a problem with that. The actress that is going to be playing Pinhead, even though she doesn't really look that intimidating outside of makeup, that's really not too much to point fingers at right now, because I'm actually more curious what she would look like in the makeup, because Doug Bradley just kind of looks like, a stereotypical kind of normal everyday guy when he's outside of the Pinhead makeup, but when you put that shit on him, he looks terrifying. So I'd be curious if this actress, who her name, by the way, is Odessa A'zion. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that last name correctly. It is A''Zion. I believe it is pronounced A'zion or A'zion. So she is going to be coming in and playing Pinhead in this one, which is going to be interesting. From her filmography, there's not a whole lot of horror there, although there is some that's kind of tacked in at the end, right around the time of this movie. And I'm not sure. Again, I'm also not sure how big of a role she's going to have in this. Now, I know some of the differences between the novella and the original film, but I'm not familiar with all of them because I haven't really read the novella. I've more or less read a lot of the differences because I'm a big fan of the film, but I just kind of never got around to reading it, unfortunately. I'd be very curious if there are any other things that they're taking from the book that might translate very interestingly onto screen. And I'd also be curious to see what they're going to wind up doing with this movie in terms of, the feel and stuff like that. Are they going to go as hardcore as Clive did with the first movie? Are they going to try and scale it back a little bit and be pussies about it? I have no idea, but it would be very interesting. Now, Clive is apparently currently involved with the television show that is currently in development for Hellraiser. He's more heavily involved in that, which is going to be going to HBO Max with Warner Brothers, and that's being helmed from David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, the creators behind the new series of Halloween movies, as well as the people that are going to be helming the Exorcist trilogy that is going to be happening at Blumhouse. So I know David Gordon Green can write good, gory horror, but the thing is, Hellraiser is a lot different of an animal than Halloween. Halloween is kind of, as much as I love the films, they are kind of paint by numbers. It's kind of the idea like, okay, Michael goes out and kills people. Eventually people figure out that Michael is killing people, and then people come around and try to kill Michael. It kind of goes in that format most of the time. There are some little nuances and little things popped in here and there to kind of, make things stand out depending on what movie it is. Sometimes they're stupid, sometimes they're not. But it really mostly just boils down to Michael Myers killing people. With Hellraiser, it's a bit of a different story because Pinhead doesn't normally. I mean, he does kill people, but he's more into the whole torture thing, and it's more of that gory, weird BDSM torture type of thing that Clive Barker was really into at the time. And I'm curious how Green and McBride are going to go with that kind of an idea, because again, it is very different from things they've dealt with in the past. Same thing actually with the Exorcist movies they're going to be doing. I'd be curious to know how they handle those, because that is again another very different animal from both of these properties. But like I said, that's the HBO Max series. But the Hulu film is being directed by David Bruckner. And David Bruckner is, I wouldn't say he's a newish director, but he isn't a guy that's necessarily been around the block more than a couple times. But here's the thing that he has over a lot of other directors they could have gotten is he does horror. And that is the important part of this whole thing, is that he knows how to do horror. He did 2 episodes of Creepshow. He did the movie The Ritual, which wasn't too bad. He did a segment from VHS, and he also did The Night House, which I haven't seen. That came out last year. But I have seen both of his segments on Creepshow, and they were both very, very good. And I actually really kind of enjoyed a lot of his writing. Now, whether or not he can stretch that out and do that with this Hellraiser film is left up to me wondering until we actually start seeing trailers and stuff from it. But he has the horror pedigree. He's lived in horror for a lot of his directing career, so I don't really see it being too much of an issue for him to come in and do Hellraiser. In addition to the fact that, Creepshow is a great example. He was able to do multiple different stories in Creepshow and make them good. And again, Creepshow has this thing of basically doing a lot of these episodes and stuff very different from one another. And he did 2 separate episodes, 2 separate segments. So I really do enjoy that, and actually the one that he did, The Man in the Suitcase, was actually very entertaining. I kind of liked that episode. That was very interesting and very weird to see a dude like shoved into a suitcase and have it actually be practical effects and not be a contortionist. But regardless, I'm very curious to see where this goes, but now that this has actually entered production and we're probably actually going to start seeing stuff from it, I want to know what you guys think. Are you excited for the novella to finally be adapted, somewhat faithfully, I guess, again, depending on, what they decide to adapt and what they don't? Are you excited for the director? Are you excited for the HBO Max series, which Clive Barker is involved in, along with David Gordon Green and Danny McBride? Put your thoughts in the comments below. As usual, I like to read them. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?